All right, and we're back with the program. It's Gerald Glassford coming right back at you here on the Pop Culture Cosmos. I'll tell you, my friends, it out there, if you're listening to us, every time I get this next guest on the show, it's just a tremendous blast. But I tell you what, I'm prepared today. I've got a nice steaming hot tamale right next to me to eat, just in case, because my next guest right here, he will always make me hungry. But I am prepared this time. It is my good friend. I'll tell you what, right now, if you're not catching Smoking Hot Confessions today, you're missing out on some of the best interviews in regards to grilling, barbecuing, and just great times, great recipes, awesome time, awesome reading, just anything about the barbecuing scene that you can get, because he's got SmokingHotConfessions.com. He's got the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast and so much more. If you're missing out today, check it out, please. Smoking Hot Confessions. It is my good friend. He's from Australia, so it gets even better down there. It is Ben Arnot. Ben, it's just great to have you on the show, talking the greatest in pop culture, in your opinion, for this past decade.
Yeah, g'day, mate. Thanks for that. I think that's the best one yet. I loved it.
I'm trying. Maybe it's the hot tamale. I just want to give a shout out to Dona Maria's here on the Las Vegas Strip. They have the best tamales in town, rated time and time again. So if you're in Vegas, check them out. And if you're into tamales and all that, it's Dona Maria's. Cannot say good enough good things. Get it every year for the holiday meals. But then it also helps when you have some wisdom teeth pulled. But I don't want to go there.
No, sounds terribly painful.
Yes, it is. It's everything that people say it is and more. But I tell you what, enough about me. I want to hear from you, my friend. This is your time in the spotlight. You've been such a great guest over the course of the many years now, and I'm so sorry I have to say many years now when it concerns you and I, because I feel so sorry for you. But I want to hear your thoughts. This decade has shaped a lot of what we see as pop culture through various means, through various ways. The rise of social media, the way we go ahead and consume our pop culture through streaming, that has come into play as well. I want to hear your thoughts as far as all the pop culture events, IPs, things that have just spoken out to you in pop culture this decade, and say, you know what, that's the best I've experienced so far in the past 10 years.
Yeah, there's so much to sort of think about when you actually sit down and do try to make a list. So I've actually ended up creating two different top 10 movies lists, because I couldn't sort of narrow it to one particular focus. But yeah, no, you're right. This decade has seen a whole lot of different sort of pop culture fundamentals, I guess, sort of change and form and spread across from just what used to be sort of nerd culture is now pop culture, which is quite interesting. I remember growing up and it was like, oh, you read comic books? Oh, what? Don't you have any friends? Ha ha ha.
The stigma has almost the stigma itself has just become detached. The stigma itself has just in many ways gone away. It's still there to some extent, but for the most part, it is now okay to enjoy various aspects of pop culture.
Yeah. Well, it's okay to enjoy all of it, as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, so we've seen the rise of the meme. Memes have become huge, and they have just crossed all fields of all topics of conversation. There's memes for that just everywhere. You wouldn't think so, but even in the world of barbecue that I play in, we have to try and tell people in the Facebook groups to sort of try and keep the meme wars to a minimum, because you can meme anything. It's pretty crazy.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, as I said before, this decade's really been the decade of comic books and comic book characters, and I can't remember the last time I saw so many Harley Quinns as at this Halloween this year. which I'm not complaining at all. It was very nice. But yeah, it really been quite a huge decade for pop culture. So I made two lists, as I said. One just my overall top 10 movies, and then another one that was my top 10 comic book movies. And now that we're sitting here talking about it, you mentioned streaming, and I'm thinking to myself, oh, there's been so much great Netflix content that's come in the last 10 years as well. And Amazon Prime, Hulu, HBO is just starting up, but I know that they've got big things coming, or at least they're just starting up in Australia. So my head is just spinning at the moment thinking of all the different things. I mean, if we're talking about comic book characters, yes, there's been all the big movies, but then you've got season 1 of Daredevil on Netflix, which was just incredible, absolutely amazing. You've got Stranger Things. Like I don't know what's a bigger pop culture icon at the moment than Stranger Things. Maybe true crime podcasts are up there as well. They've certainly come into their own in the last 10 years. And yesterday I was actually listening to a true crime podcast where one of the witnesses being interviewed was actually talking about how she and her serial pedophile boyfriend guy would sit together and watch Stranger Things. So I mean, Stranger Things is just, it pops up everywhere. It's really pervasive. It's my son is 8 and he talks about the Demogorgon, and he wants to watch Stranger Things because he wants to see the Demogorgon, because the Demogorgon is now a playable skin in Minecraft. Pop culture, Minecraft. What the hell? Like 30 years ago, when I was playing computer games, like as a kid, we were always looking for the next graphic. Like, wow, look at this amazing increase in graphics between this generation of machine and that generation. Now they've gone all the way back to like 1989, and we're back to 16-bit graphics with Minecraft, and it's one of the biggest game phenomenons in the world. It's really been a really interesting decade to see all the different sort of things that have happened.
I'll tell you what, my friend, that's very interesting to hear, and I'm glad to see that you see it in that way. I think Serial, as far as from a true crime aspect, that really kicked off the interest in true crime podcasts because of the effect it had. And I remember the fervor over, everybody just checking it out, the millions and millions of listens. And I think that's what really got me interested into it. Is like, okay, why are all these people listening to this show? And then you actually listen to it and you try to understand the case. And it was so beautifully made because of the fact it leaves you wanting to know, okay, are they trying to go ahead and favor one side or the other? Do they say he's guilty or do they say he's not guilty? But instead, what they're trying to do is just perpetuate your opinion on the actual, instance at hand, and have you form your own opinion on whether or not the gentleman is guilty. Unfortunately, the courts will not allow his case to proceed at this point in time. But, at least in the court of public opinion, it proved because of Serial and so many other true crime podcasts that people can go ahead now and form an opinion of their own and be more educated on these type of subjects.
And it really sort of shone an eye on some of the I don't know, preconceived prejudices of the legal system. Some of the recordings that they played, just it blew my mind. Oh well, he's from Pakistan, so he must have connections to go and disappear back in Pakistan and blah 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 blah. It was pretty phenomenal, but it was the storytelling that really got me about Serial. One episode you're sitting there going, yeah, Adman didn't do it. He's free. We got to get him out. And then the next episode you're like, ooh, maybe he did. And so it would take you up and then bring you down and then bring you back up and then bring you back down again. And it was just, I actually hadn't heard about it until maybe a year or so after it had been released. So I was really lucky. I was able to just smash through it all in one afternoon. Um, and that really sort of turned me on to podcasting properly. I was like, wow, now I permanently have a little set of Bluetooth earbuds that hide under my collar at work. And I got this nice big bushy beard, so I run the line up through the beard and just one into my ear, and I just wander around with just one in playing all the time at work.
That's too funny. That's too funny. But you know, as like you said, with Serial popularizing true crime podcasts, that has to be something that's mentioned in pop culture and in podcasts in general. That is something that has increased only with the advent of technology, the way we perceive smartphones. Technology has become smarter and smarter. Apps have become easier and easier to use. So that's something as a whole, podcasts, that since I've been starting out in 2011, where it was mainly internet based and you would have to go on your computer most of the time, and it was so hard to use originally on the smartphones. Now it's the other way around, and we're so much easier to use on smartphones, and everybody just goes ahead and gets their consumption in so many ways like that. But I'll tell you, my friend, pop culture in so many different facets has left people amazed with where we're going, within the structure and framework. But I know you have a list of movies that have impacted you primarily. So I want to hear your thoughts on exactly where your pop culture realm is taking you, because you, among sorry, got a lot of background noise going on there.
Yeah, the neighbor's building a fence. Sorry.
No worries, no worries. Okay, he's
I can switch microphones if you want and put the sound box up.
That might help, because yeah, he's building a fence on our show at this point in time.
Yeah. All right, give me a second here.
Oh, no
I'll turn off the camera because the box is going to come up in front of the camera anyway.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
Going to move my list over a little bit here so I can still read it. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can.
Has that cut out a lot of the background noise?
Yes, it has. Oh my gosh, done a lot. Yes.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
All right. So continuing our conversation, I just wanted to ask you, because you said you had you said you had two lists in regards to movies that have touched you over the course of the past 10 years in regards to pop culture. So I want you to go ahead and as just freely expressive as possible, just describe these movies to our audience and tell them what kind of effect they've had on you, because to you, this has been the best of pop culture over the past 10 years.
Yeah. So I've got the two lists. One is just comic book movies, and the other one is overall top 10 movies. So we might start by looking at the overall top 10.
Sounds great to me. Absolutely.
All right. Cool. So the first one for me is Mission Impossible Fallout. I realize that it's like the sixth movie in the franchise or something, and the further into the franchise you get, typically speaking, the less good. That's awful grammar. The less quality film they are. But I just thought that was, considering Tom Cruise's age and where he's at, and the fact that these films started in 1996 and they haven't recast the actor in the role. It's not like James Bond, where you get one James Bond for 8 or 9 years and then he switches out. It's been Tom Cruise for 23 years. I thought that was really fantastic. And the scene where he's hanging by his hands from the roof, and the guy's well in his 50s now, and he's able to still do those stunt scenes and that. I just thought that it was incredible, and I liked the pop culture nods in that film as well. So, casting Superman as the villain, that sort of thing. I thought, I thought all that was pretty cool as well.
Well, I'll tell you what, when it comes to Mission Impossible Fallout, I mean, the great success from that film, they're continuing the series even more. I mean, Paramount now has full plans for it if they didn't have it before. They're now filming the next two Mission Impossibles back to back that will be released one year and then the other year, a la what we saw with Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
Yeah, that'll be interesting to see if they're going to ramp up the storylines like Avengers Infinity War and and Endgame did as well.
Well, I'm your list is starting off on a great note, my friend. So I want to hear your thoughts more on the top 10 films of Ben Arnot over the course of this past decade.
So number nine's got to be Get Out, just because it was so socially challenging. I think that it's really important for films to be provocative and sort of try and promote social change by making us aware of some of the injustices in society. So I love that one for that reason. Number eight has to be Mad Max Fury Road, purely because I'm Australian and Mad Max is an Australian series, and the writer and Fury Road was it was a bit of a swing back to the Australian style of filmmaking after Mad Max 3, where it swung to complete Hollywood style of filmmaking. If you actually watch the first three, Mad Max 1, 2, and then Thunderdome, Thunderdome is a completely different style of film to Mad Max 1 and 2. And I felt that Mad Max Fury Road was a bit of a swing back towards the origins, which I really appreciated. And my son's friend's father was actually the guy playing the guitar strapped to the front of that truck shooting across the desert there. So there's a bit of a personal connection to that. Where we at? Seven, Creed. I love Rocky. I love the Rocky, and I thought that by shifting the focus, and of course it's Michael B. Jordan, who's just an awesome actor in everything he touches. I thought Creed was really cool. I liked that it touched on the nostalgia of watching the Rocky films, but also introduced new characters, and you could see that the franchise has a direction to go. Uh, Next generation, I guess, really. Um, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Number 6 is Inception. It's kind of at the start of the decade there, but I've always really liked Christopher Nolan's movies. The first one of his that I saw was Memento, and Memento just blew my mind. And then Inception came along several years later, and just blew my mind again. It was really sort of pushing the boundaries of stories that you can tell in cinema.
One of the things I want to ask you, especially when it concerns Nolan's career, is because he has so many great films, and Memento is the one that everybody seems to point to, but I don't know how many people have actually seen it. I know you and I sound like we've seen it because I've seen it way back when, but it's just so hard to find now. It's not streaming anywhere, to my knowledge. If it is, it's just something that's really hard to find. So it just seemingly it sounds like that movie that everybody has said they've seen, but very few of us, unless you're around our age, have actually seen it.
Yeah, I think you've actually got to sort of hunt it down. I don't think it was huge in the box office at the time because it was such a different way of telling a story.
Exactly.
Um, and so I don't think it was a huge hit in the box office, but it's one of those films that has since become a cult classic. Um, and in Inception, I think I mean, 2019, 2012, it's only 7 years. I don't think it's long enough to call it a cult classic yet, but it definitely will be. Um, and it's got that pairing of Tom Hardy and Christopher Nolan, which just works together so well as well.
It's a great list so far, my friend. I'm truly impressed with it, and I'm so excited to hear more. So I want to hear more thoughts on your best of the decade when it concerns the cinema.
So number 5 is the first comic book movie on this list, and that's Captain America: Civil War. one of the things that my father and I used to do when we were sort of bonding and hanging out was he is a huge James Bond fan, and we'd watched all these old James Bond films. And what I loved about Civil War was that it was a little bit different a style than previous comic book movies, and it had that element of espionage and that sort of that James Bond feel to it as well. And so for me, that really appealed to me in that, because it sort of, it hit those buttons of nostalgia and feelings of family and stuff that are really important to me. And I think it just really it sort of set the it sort of set the bar for the emotional depths and intrigue that a comic book movie is capable of that perhaps we hadn't seen before.
Couldn't agree with you more on that, my friend. Definitely some great thoughts there. I just can't. Your list is just really rocking, my friend. So don't 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 let me stop you, man. Continue on with your great list.
All right. Next up, Thor Ragnarok. I know that this one's a bit polarizing. People either sort of love it or hate it, and I think for me, I love it, and I think it's because of Taika Waititi, his involvement. The New Zealand sense of humor is really similar to the Australian sense of humor, and watching this film in the cinemas in Australia, the people were just in stitches in the cinema, laughing out loud. It was raucous. It was fun. It had a great soundtrack. There was a bit of the throwback to the 80s in there with some of the lighting effects and the colorization of the film, and the music, of course. And so for me, I that one really stood out to me as well, as did the next one on the list, which was Black Panther. Um, to be honest, I'd never actually heard of Black Panther until they started announcing that they were going to make this movie. And so I started reading up on the character, and he was a really interesting character. And I thought it's going to be interesting to see how they sort of pull this off. And they just did it so well. That movie was so good. It told stories that are important right now. It told stories that really matter, and it's gonna really open the door to some better balanced representation in Hollywood, I think. And so, but I pretty much think because of the success of Black Panther, we're now going to see Simu Liu. Sorry about my pronunciation. Is going to do Shang Chi, and I think that Black Panther probably paved the way in a big way for that film. Um, Now, number 2 is probably gonna be a bit of a surprise. I'm going animated. I'm gonna go Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. When I heard about it, when I started reading about it, I was really skeptic. I thought, "Oh, there's no way they can pull this off. This is gonna be just terrible." And I only watched it because my son was, "Daddy, we have to watch it. Daddy, we gotta watch it." So I watched it, and I sat there, and I just was laughing out loud, and it's got the heights of comedy and then moments of sadness, and it's got the full spectrum of emotions and beats of action and beats of quiet that appeal to both adults and kids. It's not just aimed at kids. A lot of the entertainment aimed at kids these days, I don't know how you feel about it. I feel like I'm gonna get a headache watching it. It's so, like, if kids didn't have ADHD before, they probably got it because of the they probably developed it because of the style of movies and TV shows that are coming out for them. But Into the Spider-Verse, just it was so well balanced, and uh just appealed to both adults and kids. And I'm actually really excited now to see what they do next with that. And I think it kind of sets an interesting precedent. And that they kind of mentioned it in Spider-Man Far From Home, this idea of a multiverse. Um, it's going to be quite interesting. It seems to be working for DC at the moment on the DC TV universe, Arrow, Flash, Black Lightning, um, all of those different shows. They seem to be managing it pretty well. So I'm going to be able to see if the MCU can sort of translate that across from the animated world into live action. That's going to be really interesting.
I agree with you on that. And just seems like they're going to go ahead and start making some smarter moves. And we've talked about DC in a negative light over the course of the years we've been speaking to each other. But now DC, before we head on to the rest of your list, DC seems to be heading at least into a right direction. It's got a series of backbone films they can go ahead and potentially grow off of to a better future than what was expected from them before.
Yeah, they've sort of shifted focus from we want an instant universe to okay, we need to grow these solo storylines before we start trying to bring them together again. So I think that that's good. I think they tried to sort of uh, jump from where Marvel started in 2008 to where Marvel was in 2013. I felt like they tried to just jump straight in at 2013 in terms of character and story development. And I think they've realized that, oh, no, we're going to have to go back and we're going to have to build these individual characters that the people care about, you know, the equivalent of the Iron Man, the Captain America, you know, the Thors. They're going to have to find those characters and flesh out those characters, build out their storylines, and then start bringing them together. I think that's probably what they're going to do now.
So that's a those are some great thoughts again from Ben Arnot of Smoking Hot Confessions. You got to check out all the awesome things that he's doing today at smokinghotconfessions.com, and also the great interviews and great episodes that he has with his podcast, Smoking Hot Confessions, that's available on Apple Podcasts or, wherever you get your podcasts. So you got Pop Culture Cosmos on one hand, and you've got Smoking Hot Confessions on the other. But Ben, I'll tell you what right now, there's more great stuff on the way from you. So continue, my friend, with your great list of movies that have just impressed you so much this decade.
So I've got two more on the list. I know I said that Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was number 2, but I've got two more. The number one film for me, the film that really sort of struck me the most was Gone Girl. I watched it. I think I've seen it once, and it's not the kind of film that I felt like I needed to go back and watch again and again. But it struck me so much the first time that I watched it. It might be part of that whole true crime genre that everyone seems to be obsessed with at the moment. That kind of that realistic sort of crime genre. I don't know, but just the storytelling, the actor portrayals in there. I'm not a huge Ben Affleck fan, but I thought he was great in that. Rosamund Pike was just phenomenal in that. And I loved. I've always loved Doogie Howser. I'm just mental blanking now.
Are you talking about the gentleman who played Doogie Howser in the television show?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You're talking about Neil Patrick Harris.
Yes. All I'm hearing in my head is challenge accepted from How I Met Your Mother. So, yes, Neil Patrick Harris. He was fantastic in it, in a role that was very different to what I'd seen him do before. And yeah, that movie just really kind of struck me. It was hitting on pressure points in terms of like marriages and relationships and money issues and what is control, what is power, what is love, what is it just sort of raised all these questions and sort of just packaged it all up and presented it in such a thought-provoking way that even now someone mentions Gone Girl and I instantly go back to it in my mind to watching it, and the feelings I was feeling watching it were really visceral, and so my memories take me back to those feelings exactly at that point in time. So I that's my number one in terms of movies that sort of really struck me in this decade. Now, the last one, I've left it to last because it's got huge personal significance for me, but isn't necessarily one of the best films made of the decade, if that makes sense.
Fair enough. It's your list, my friend. So don't worry about it. You can go ahead and lay it out all you want. So yeah, just keep going, my friend. Just love to hear your thoughts on the things that have just given you such a big impression this decade.
Yeah. So for me, it's got to be Star Wars: The Force Awakens. It's not necessarily the best made film of the decade, but I'm a huge Star Wars fan. I have been. I remember being 5 years old and being absolutely rapt when my mum bought me a Luke Skywalker toothbrush. And so my son's now at about the age where I was, where I started watching Star Wars and loving it. And so when The Force Awakens came out, my son was 4 years old. And what we did was for 6 weeks before the release of that film, we watched one of the old Star Wars every week for 6 weeks. It was a family affair. We'd get some popcorn, get some soft drink. Everyone would sit on the couch under a blanket and watch these movies together. And so it was fantastic bonding time. And at 4 years old, he was so wrapped in Star Wars by the end of that process. That 4-year-old kid sat through that 2.5 hour movie and didn't once complain, whinge, or need to go to the bathroom. So I've now created a monster for myself because everything is Star Wars. Last year for Christmas, when he went to sleep, he woke up and Santa Claus had completely renovated his bedroom around him and turned it into like a Star Wars universe bedroom.
Oh, that's incredible.
Complete with red shag carpet, so it looks like the some of the planet surfaces. Um, we and we're gearing up to go and watch the Rise of Skywalker in the next 2 weeks.
Well, that's awesome. Force Awakens, like you said, it may not be the best made of films, but it is something that has shaped the past decade because it returned the Star Wars franchise into theaters. It returned the Star Wars, I guess, empire, for lack of a better term, back into the consciousness of our pop culture. It is something that, okay, it was maybe something on the decline, something on the, as far as people just not wanting to, really get into it because of the bad taste a lot of people had in their mouths because of the previous decade and the prequels. So, just because it just left such a bad taste in everybody's mouth, or in so many people's mouths, I should say. So, The Force Awakens, whether or not you want to say it's a great film, a good film, or whatever, it is for me, I think it was a safe venture for JJ. It followed a formula that had already been tried and tested. To my, for many ways, for people of this decade, like your son, he'll remember it, like you said, like you remember Star Wars, and it followed a safe formula that was seen back in 1977 with Star Wars. So I can't fault J.J. Abrams for going that direction and taking that step and making sure that it's something a lot of people wanted to see. Now, where the series goes from here, it's anyone's guess. Like you said, it's culminating on December 20th with the Rise of Skywalker, but I'm very excited to see. A lot of people are excited to see as well exactly where this will go as far as the culmination of the Skywalker saga, as it were.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's it's funny that you mentioned the bad taste that people have with those prequels. So we've never said to my son, these movies are the good ones, these movies are the bad ones. We just sat and watched them all, and he will go back and watch Empire of his own free choosing again and again and again and again. And so in this lead up to the Rise of Skywalker, we did that again. We've been watching one movie a week for the last, I think we're up to 8 or 9 weeks now. And when it came time to kick it off, he just asked me if we could skip straight to A New Hope. He didn't want to sit and watch the first three.
I don't blame him a bit. But but you've got some great lists as well as far as for comic book movies that have shaped the decade. So I got to hear your thoughts, my friend, on the films in comic book world, in a comic book realm, that you feel have shaped the decade, because comic book films have become a major part of pop culture this decade.
Yeah, absolutely. So kicking things off at number 10, I've got Ant-Man and the Wasp. Really, that it was heavy. Some of the previous films had been, it was light, it was fun, it was kind of what we needed after such a heavy couple of films there. And I've always liked Paul Rudd, and I've always liked Evangeline Lilly, and they just seem to work really well together. I would not be surprised if we actually see Evangeline Lilly's Wasp character sort of spin off and get her own trilogy of movies, because she was she was probably the best thing in that movie. I think it's pretty fair to say. And yeah, I just really loved it for that reason. Next was Avengers Infinity War, just purely because they managed to handle the scale of it so well. Trying to get so many characters on screen and doing so many different things. The recognized game. So I liked that they had built these incredibly in-depth and engaging emotional ties with these characters, and then weren't afraid to kill them off, to give them, to make things final. Um, I was actually really surprised in Ultron when they killed off Quicksilver, because it was such a strange thing for a comic book film to do, to actually kill a character. And for the next couple of films, I was like, oh, he'll be back, he'll be back, he'll be back, and we just haven't seen him. And then for them to go right to the top, and I guess it's not a spoiler now. The movie's been out for long enough, hasn't it? But to kill off, those two great characters, um, I thought it was very brave. I thought it gave the stories closure. Like I feel like we're ready for the next arc, which I think is important because people aren't going to feel like, oh, this is just dragging. After what are we up to? 24 films in 12 years or something. Um, it's gonna it the next phase is gonna feel new and fresh. It's gonna feel like a new chapter, not just they're sort of trying to beat a dead horse and drag as much out of it as they can. So in terms of storytelling and I guess boldness, I've put Endgame in there. Next was Civil War, Captain America: Civil War. I've already spoken to that. Followed by Aquaman. I was so skeptical about this. I was so skeptical. Um, I'd seen Justice League, wasn't a fan of Justice League. I didn't think that Aquaman would be a strong enough character to be a lead in his own film franchise. I thought he was a good supporting character, and I was completely wrong. And I'm happy to say that I was completely wrong. I loved the film Aquaman. Um, I'm an ocean boy. I live 4 blocks off the beach. I love the water, the smells, just all of it. And so for that to work in that ocean setting really sort of struck a chord with me, and I was very happy to be surprised at just how good that film was. Um, Followed closely by Wonder Woman. Wow, what a film! What a film! That was, it's right up there. I mean, getting to the pointy end of this list, I mean, it's hard, really hard to separate them. But Wonder Woman probably could be a little bit higher in the list, but yeah, um, it was really refreshing to see a female character be sexy because she's so strong, not because of what she's wearing or she flirts or things like that. She was sexy because she kicked butt hard, and she didn't take any guff from anybody, and that was what was appealing about her character. So that was really nice to see such a strong female character on screen, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what comes next. I was actually a bit disappointed with the way her character was handled in Justice League. They'd done the Wonder Woman film and they'd built this character that was, as I said, she was sexy because of her strength, not because of necessarily what she was wearing. And then Justice League comes along, the skirt's a bit shorter. We're getting upskirt butt shots of her. And I felt that overly sexualized what was already a an honestly sexy character. That's kind of a strange way of putting it, honestly sexy, but um, basically, I I think you can get what I'm saying there. Um, Next was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. I already spoke about that, and then Spider-Man Homecoming is my number 3. Um, I was I loved the Sam Raimi Spider-Man films, 1 and 2. Number 3 really just disappointed me. Um, I thought that the Andrew Garfield films, I didn't mind number 1. I thought number 1 was pretty good. It was an interesting sort of new angle on Spider-Man. But the second one, I just I thought that was just terrible, and I can see why they chose to end that franchise at 2. And so Spider-Man: Homecoming, again, I was skeptical. I was like, "Oh, here we go. We're going to get the Spider-Man story again." Um, but it was just so good. Tom Holland just really sort of took that character on, and he was really convincing in that character as a teenage high school kid who, suddenly wakes up and can climb walls and things. I just thought they just really nailed that, and I loved having uh oh dang it, 89 Batman, Michael Keaton. I loved having Michael Keaton come back into a comic book movie as well as a villain. I thought that was really cool. Um, and he was great in that role too. I wouldn't mind if his character breaks out of prison and, you know, forms a Spider-Man Rogues Gallery or something and comes back and pops up in later films. He was just so good. And number 2 for me was Thor Ragnarok that I spoke to before. I was just in stitches. I thought that was hilarious. I want to see more of that stuff. That really appealed to my sense of humor. And the last one, number 1, I think is probably the most significant film in the franchise was Black Panther, which I also spoke to before. Yeah, did a lot of positive things, presented different characters in different ways that we hadn't seen before. And I'm really excited to see Black Panther 2. I think I was reading it's scheduled for 2021. Is that right?
I believe so. With the next. Oh, excuse me. With the next Black Panther is going to be a Phase 5 movie, so you're probably not going to see it. I'm sorry, until probably 2022 at the earliest, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Well, either way, I'm still really looking forward to it.
I'll tell you what, my friend, that's a great list right there. It's just so amazing to see that you have such an imprint, and that comic book movies have had such an imprint in your lives and your family's lives over the course of the past 10 years, because the rise and quality improvement of the comic book films as opposed to what was done even in the previous decades. So it's great to see that your thoughts as far as what on how this decade was shaped because of pop culture. Just love to hear your thoughts. If you have thoughts on yourself, if you have thoughts out there on what Ben Arnot was talking about when it concerns pop culture over the past 10 years, or if you got your own stuff you want to talk about as far as what impressed you over the course of the past decade, please feel free to let us know. popculturecosmos@yahoo.com or popculturecosmos on any one of our social media outlets on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. But before I let you go, my friend, you got to go ahead and share some knowledge with us, some great food knowledge and some holiday food ideas, or just something to go ahead at this point in time of year that feels December-ish, as far as something that I think a lot of people would like to go ahead and have with their family gather around them, or the friends that come over, or the neighbors that unexpectedly and uninvitedly, hey man, how you doing, Ben? Gonna come over. Oh, you're cooking? All right. That sounds good. All right, I'm coming on over. So I want to hear your thoughts, my friend, on maybe a great holiday dish idea or holiday dishes idea that you think will really go well over this holiday.
Well, the thing to remember about Christmas in Australia is it's hot, really hot over here. Um, so this Christmas, they're predicting already it's going to be about 105 degrees here. I'm on the Gold Coast, so we'll have about 80% humidity. So if you're talking about a traditional Aussie Christmas lunch, we typically have cold cuts. So we'll get a leg of smoked ham, and we don't eat it hot. We'll keep it in the fridge, so it's at sort of 4 degrees Celsius, like nice and cold. Mangoes straight out of the fridge, fresh prawns or shrimp, again chilled straight out of the fridge, and of course some icy cold beers. And one of the reasons for that is because if you're going to, bake an 18-hour turkey and all that sort of stuff, your house is going to be just unbearably hot by the time you've been running your kitchen for that long. So one of the things that we do in my house, because we're a cross-cultural family, my wife's American and I'm Australian, we put all that together. So we have the cold cuts, the mangoes, the prawns, the icy cold beer, but then I'll go out to the barbecue and I'll put something on the barbecue outside, and so we still have some of those hot meats and veggies and things for Christmas lunch as well. So we have a real sort of fusion. And what I've been working on perfecting lately is a crackling roast pork. So succulent, juicy pork on the inside, and then that crunchy, salted pork crackle on the outside. And so, um, if you like, I can explain how to do that, and then people can have that on their Christmas table as well.
By all means, my friend. I told you already that I just ate, so I'm good. So I've got my defense against your juicy, yummy explanations, as you always do when it concerns great meals. So go ahead, my friend, lay it on me as far as that great recipe coming up.
Alrighty. So you want to sort of make things as easy for yourself as possible. So head down to your local butcher. By all means, if the supermarket does this, then grab it from the supermarket. Otherwise, support a local butcher. They do so much for the community and trust. Um, Head down to your local butcher. Tell them you want a boned rolled leg of pork with the skin on, and ask them to score it for you. So what that means is they're going to take a nice big sharp knife and they're going to cut some lines into that skin of the pork, and then you're going to get that home. You're going to unwrap it. You're going to put it in a tray, and you're going to rub it with sea salt flakes and put it in the fridge overnight. The salt is going to draw the moisture out of the skin. Try and keep the salt off the meat as much as you can. Just try and pack it onto that skin. And by drawing that moisture out of the skin, you've got a much higher chance of getting a more even and more crackly crackle, if that's a thing, during the cooking process. Now, you can do this in any sort of hooded grill or hooded barbecue. Personally, I'm a huge fan of charcoal, so I'll do this on a PK 360 from PK Grills, or I'll propane grill. You can still do it with a propane grill. What you sources on the right side and the left side. So if it's a Weber or a PK, you can push the charcoal all off to either side. If it's a propane grill, if you're going to need at least 3 burners. 4 is probably even better. Turn on the rightmost one and the leftmost one, and you're going to sit your pork in a tray. And if you're roasting rack as well, just to get the pork up off the bottom of the pan, that's even a little bit better. And you can do sorts of things like you can create a bed of sliced Granny Smith apples or green apples, and some onion slices as well, and that'll roast in under the pork. The pork drippings will go down over those onions and apples, and then you can puree that at the end of the process into some homemade delicious applesauce. So I'll actually load that up with charcoal, get the charcoal lit, get that blazing hot. You want the two sides blazing as hot as you can get it. You want your grill sitting at around 450 Fahrenheit, 430 to 450 Fahrenheit, and you're going to sit that pork in the middle and close the lid. And after about 45 minutes to an hour, you're going to open that up and have a bit of a look at the crackle. Tap it with the back of a knife, and if you hear that tonk, tonk, tonk sound, that means that it's crackled. You'll also feel it, because if it still feels soft, then obviously it hasn't crackled. If it hasn't crackled yet, put the lid back down, check again in 30 minutes. If it has crackled, then you turn the if it's a charcoal grill, cut the oxygen supply right down. So you want to drop that temperature right down. And if it's a gas grill, just turn the gas nozzles down to bring that down to a minimum. And what that does is that blast of high heat at the start is what forms that crackle on the outside, and then the lower heat will bring the internal temperature of the pork up to a perfect roast temperature of 165 Fahrenheit internal. Now, for this, it probably is better if you do have some wireless thermometers and some instant read thermometers. The wireless thermometer is going to let you know if it's got a minimum of 2 probes. This is the key. You want a 2-probe wireless thermometer, one that you can set on the grill so you can find out what the atmospheric temperature is inside your barbecue. And the other probe goes right into the middle of that leg of pork, so you know what's happening right in the middle there. So when that hits 165, then you pull it off, wrap some foil over the top of the pork, and just sit it in your oven inside with the oven switched off, because the oven is a fantastic insulator. We want to keep it at the temperature. We don't want to make it any hotter, but we want to keep it at that temperature for about 30 minutes, just to give it a rest so the muscles can relax and reabsorb some of the juices and all that sort of stuff. And so what you'll end up with is this beautiful, moist, perfectly cooked 165-degree Fahrenheit pork roast with fantastic, salty, crunchy skin on the outside. Oh, I forgot to talk about how to finish prepping the skin. Wow, I'm awful today. I'm telling this all back to front. Okay, so you've salted the skin the night before. You pull it out, wipe that salt off, get some olive oil, and massage the olive oil all over the skin of that piece of pork, and then resalt it. Then put it into the barbecue to cook. I don't use any wood when I'm doing that, just because I like traditional roast pork flavor for that. I don't really like smoky flavored crackle, but you can if you want to. Just keep in mind, though, that with the charcoal burning that high and that hot, you're running the risk of getting some of that acrid smoke flavor rather than the delicious sort of flavor of traditional barbecue joints. So me personally, I just cut the wood out altogether, and I just cook that delicious, juicy, crackly rolled pork leg over charcoal, and it is just mind blowing.
That's just I'm telling you, man. Even I just ate, and yet I'm hungry again after listening to that. My gosh, it's just truly incredible. Once again, you pull it off like no one else with a great holiday meal idea. It is my good friend Ben Arnot from the Smoking Hot Confessions podcast. You got to check out everything that he's doing today at smokinghotconfessions.com. And of course, his amazing award-winning podcast, Smoking Hot Confessions. But before we head on out, you got to tell everybody why Smoking Hot Confessions is the place to go for all their barbecuing needs.
Thanks, mate. So, Smoking Hot Confessions, we cover all the bases. So we've got recipes, we've got product reviews. I travel to events and I cover the events. We've got all the photography and videos that you're ever going to want to look at if that's your thing. We've got the podcast happening. We are moving more into videos, and all that building and stuff that you can hear in the background. That's landscapers out the back. We're going all in on barbecue. We're doing a full landscaping remodel of the backyard. We're setting it all up for barbecue. I can't say exactly what's going on just yet. I'm going to reveal that a bit later on. But yeah, we're going all in. So I do apologize for that background construction noise, but that's what's happening there. So there's big things coming in 2020. And mate, I'm going to be heading back to the US again in April. I don't know. Las Vegas is a long way from Louisville, Kentucky, isn't it?
Just a bit, yes, it is.
Okay, all right. So we're probably not going to meet up in person, but I'm heading over to Louisville, Kentucky for the National Barbecue and Grilling Association's annual conference. It's the biggest barbecue industry conference in the world. And for 2020, I've actually been invited to go and present. So I'm going to be jumping up on stage there in front of all the really committed, super diehard barbecue fans, and I'm going to be presenting to them about. I haven't decided exactly yet. It's going to be something along the lines of using social media to build your barbecue business, something like that.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's a great time indeed to go ahead and get into barbecuing even more and the grilling scene. So you want to check out today, smokinghotconfessions.com, with everything that Ben Arnot's doing. It sounds awesome. It just gets even better and better, bigger and bigger each and every time I talk to you. It is Smoking Hot Confessions. And I'll tell you what, Ben, it's just been so great to talk to you today about everything in pop culture. Any last thoughts on the way out?
Mate, I'm just stoked for 2020. I can't even tell you. It's really exciting. There's in the world of pop culture, there's big things coming up. In the world of barbecue, there's big things coming up. we're in a bit of that awkward growth phase at the moment, just in our household. You know, that those moments of sort of growing pains or something really big happens, and yeah, I just can't wait for 2020.
Well, it's going to be a great decade indeed coming up. I have a feeling even better for pop culture than it was before. But I just appreciate you telling everybody today your thoughts on how pop culture has shaped this decade, and of course, some great holiday cooking ideas as well. Thanks so much, my friend. I appreciate the time that you've taken today talking to us, and just cannot thank you enough for being a part of the show these past years. And you know what? Continued success to you and everything with Smoking Hot Confessions. And I'll tell you what, you are always welcome back to tell us more great ideas, provided I eat something first, of course, right here on the Pop Culture Cosmos.